Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Thursday Garden Chat, the weekly public service broadcast from Garden Masterclass. Our main business is running webinars and marketing the recordings of those webinars and organising live events, mostly but not entirely in Great Britain. We are just on the sort of cusp of turning from our live events season to our what we call our winter webinar season. People quite rightly don't want to be sitting in front of a screen when they could be outside, but when it gets dark in the evenings, that's an opportunity to watch and learn and be inspired. So we're kicking off on the 1st of October, if my memory serves me right, with a webinar on small-scale autumn colour with Jack Aldridge, who's one of the up-and-coming bright young things working at RHS Wisley. I must say, I think there's an awful lot of bright young things around at the moment, which I think is, really, really good news. One of those things you sort of listen to constantly in the horticulture world is the older generation moaning on about, oh, there's nobody coming after us after we die. It all gets a bit like that. So I'm just really glad that there are. I'm 66, by the way. That's my, so that's not that old. So it's great that there just seem to be so many, young people around the moment. Two of whom we're going to be interviewing this evening. But before I get on to that, our two remaining live events are our final event at the Surge Hill Plant Library, Tom Stewart-Smith's amazing, wonderful, really fantastic innovation, almost like a botanical, private botanical garden in Hertfordshire, and a day at the White House Farm. That's Maurice Foster's Arboretum. Again, it's a private initiative, a really fantastic collection of woody plants in Kent. So those two dates are on the diary pages on the website. And we've got all of our webinars until probably early January up on the website. So we're taking bookings for all of those. And we'll keep on putting up more events for the new year. And in terms of courses, the naturalistic planting design course we're running, again, very, very successful, this time with an added 2 sessions from Professor Cassian Schmidt in Germany. And we'll be making those 2 sessions available to people who've been on the course. We'll make those available especially. And we've also got a course on trees, tree planting for climate change, with Henrik Schumann, who is a Swedish academic who has written the most extraordinary book on trees. I mean, it's all the latest evidence on what sort of tree planning we should be doing for the future, and that's particularly relevant for the landscape architects amongst you. So now our other initiative we've started, we actually launched it last week, is our new podcast channel on Substack. This is so that you can listen to us as well as watch us. And we've got a lot of material, old archive material, where it's possible to turn to audio. We're doing that. We're also recording fresh material so that we'll try and get a new podcast up once a week. Starting in January, we're also going to be doing something else, because today I made the first recording with Caroline Jackson, starting a series called Know Your Plants, and that will be an information-packed audio learning resource to learn about garden plants. And we're going to plan about 30 or so on shrubs. Caroline and I will talk our way through, and it'll be backed up by plant names on the Substack website. And that will be that's a whole new initiative, and I must say our first session this morning started off very well. I mean, Caroline and I, we hardly know each other, only met her once, but we really spark off each other, and it should be, an entertaining way to learn more about garden plants. So without any more ado, if you are new to us, do please sign up for the email newsletter on the homepage of the website. And if you absolutely adore us, then we'd love you to become a member. And that's all on the homepage. So yes, returning to aforementioned bright young things, it's really nice to have some more people here who run a nursery. As Steve Edney and Louise, I first heard of, and actually Steve reminded me that I have actually met him, but I can't remember. Jimmy Blake's. As I know, Jimmy Blake was raving about the nursery as a great source of dark-leaved dahlias, I think it was. Jimmy was having one of his obsessions, and it was, for that particular week, it was dark-leaved dahlias, and he's probably moved on to something else the week after, variegated snowdrops or something. So Steve and Louise have a nursery in Sandwich in Kent, and the nursery is called the No-Name Nursery. And I think before we do anything else, why the No-Name Nursery?
Well, first of all, I think it's probably right to say that we have a lot of polite argument because we don't always agree with each other. So there's robust conversation, and that goes right through even to what we might call ourselves. Certainly, I think, if you're as a nursery, it must be the hardest. Well, we found it the hardest thing to name ourselves. If you're Chrysanthemums Direct, you can really only sell chrysanthemums. And how do we convey ourselves in a way that shows that we have a really eclectic gardener mix of plants that changes all the time?
So in our usual style, one evening we were sat at the dinner table debating with a list of names, and I just sat there and said, that's it, it's not having a name. No name.
And
then I thought about it a bit more, and actually in Sandwich, where we are, historic medieval town, there's already, and there has been
since the 16th century, there's been the No-Name Street in
really?
And there is a no-name shop.
And so we thought, what a nice link to the
local. So it has with the past. Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah.
And as soon as one of our nursery friends said, "Oh, I don't like that name," I said, "Oh, I think we're onto something then, because I don't trust anything you say."
So how did you both get started in horticulture?
Right. Well, do you want me to share our screen? Because it's
that will answer all questions. Okay.
So that we thought being nice and casual this evening, we'd start with a bit of a background on us and
sure. Yeah. Great.
Do my thing at sharing the screen. When I hang on.
When you get it right.
When I get it right, here we go. Now, hopefully, we can start. Oh, hang on. Here we go. Right, so hang on. We can probably dodge this one. This is just a nice picture.
Can you go to full screen?
Yeah,
well, there we are. That's it. Yeah.
You're on full screen, are you? Excellent.
We're on full screen, right? Yeah. So
let me start. Let's move to this one. We'll start with Lou, shall we? You wanna dive in?
So I'm one of the career changers. 27 was when I started training in horticulture. I'd always gardened, but this is some of my background here, really. I had a very kind of artistic background, but also I was a landlady at a very young age, of 20. So the forestry thing, I do a lot of flower arranging. And actually, when I was very young, I wanted to be a florist. And horticulture wasn't one of those choices here at school. I didn't like school, but I liked doing art, and I liked doing textiles at school. So I always had a creative side. So this is some of the things that I did get up to. I used to run a yarn and craft department at H Fabrics, which was a large haberdashery and furnishing shop in Canterbury. And so knitting was one of my things, hence still is a thing. And still is. Yeah, my favourite thing in the winter when I'm gardening and it's dark early. And embroidery and cake making. Love a bit of cake making, and of course more flowers involved in the cake making, wedding cake. So do lots of different things in the past. But
yeah, I would say so. Lou came to me at Salutation when I was head gardener as a career changer and took part in one of my apprenticeships. And really quickly you know, she impressed me. Well, obviously impressed me. I ended up being my partner. She was a mature student. She was 27 when she came to me. I should, and I wasn't directly assessing her. There was no conflict of interest. But I was, you know, because I'm a bit of a, I guess I'm old school, because I'm, for me, I mean, Lou is so creative in so many different ways. In fact, she even made for the gardeners, because we found an old picture when I was head gardener at Salutation in Sandwich. We found a picture of all the gardeners in their waistcoats and tweed ties and moleskin trousers and flat caps. And so we decided we were going to be the best dressed gardeners in Kent and have waistcoats and ties and shirts every day, which we did. And Lou made all of our waistcoats for us and made all different linings inside. Very creative. In fact, incessantly creative. I think, you know, to every little detail. It's not, oh, that'll do. It's like, no, we can do better. Or let's go back to this. Let's do it. It's not going to be right. Maybe we'll go back to it. So she's incessantly, you know, sort of challenging me. And so if I just move on a little to say,
so you mentioned the salutation a couple of times. What's that?
Yeah, so Salutation is a lovely Lutchins house and gardens in the heart of Sandwich in East Kent, and it's right by the river, right in the middle of the medieval town of Sandwich. So there are like about 5,000 people living in Sandwich, and there have been, the census from about 500 years ago was only 5,000 people living in Sandwich. It really hasn't changed much down on that East Kent corner. Actually, so many pubs and restaurants and bars and all that sort of stuff. I kind of liken Sandwich to 5,000 alcoholics clinging to a sandbank, particularly when you I'm sure some of the people of Sandwich, if you listen to this, I'm sorry, it's true though. The owners of the Salutation gained a bit of notoriety long after I became their head gardener, and we opened to the public actually as a garden, because they were Dom and Steph, the posh couple from Gogglebox, that dreaded TV program.
Oh yeah, oh right, okay.
The posh couple, and so everyone got to know them.
Not the posh drunk couple.
That's it. That's it.
Oh really? Oh, they were our favorites. My wife used to love Gogglebox, and they were her favorite couple.
And so I turned up around. So I'm a career gardener. I started. Yes. So unlike Lou, I was very lucky. My school actually had an environment, and I studied environmental studies even at GCSE. I was always interested in the natural world, and that has changed a lot over the years. You know, you kind of get taken down rabbit holes, of course. But I went straight into the world of horticulture, trained at Hadlow, which is our local Kent-based, land-based industries college, in landscape construction. I then studied arboriculture at Merris Wood. I advanced as well. So I sort of did lots of study, but realized the best place to learn was actually to be doing. So spent about 10 years working for various people, never really following money, but following interesting projects and people, of which there's not that many big interesting gardens, or even small interesting gardens in East Kent. There are a few, but not tons. It's kind of, there's a bit of a void down there, or down here, should I say. And so in 2005, I was doing some tree work at the Salutation, and the owners had just bought the Salutation, Dom and Steph, and were looking for a head gardener. And I said, I'd loved the challenge of restoring a Lutchins garden. As it turned out, really, we never uncovered any planting plans for the Salutation, although there was an awful lot of talk about Gertrude Jekyll being responsible, of course, because there was the Lutchins link as a house and garden. So assume it must be Jekyll, but actually I found the original sellers listing from 1945, which that's after, it was built for three brothers. It was their weekend residence. So they lived in Chelsea most of the time. They came down for weekends and for summer holidays. But when the last of the three brothers died in 1945, it came up for sale for the very first time. And so I saw that original seller's listing, no mention of Gertrude Jekyll on there. Now, she died a few years before that. And Lutchen's only the year before that, I think, in 44. And so that said to me, it was unlikely Jekyll planted garden. I think there would have been a song and dance about it. She was well known in her day. So, but we never turned up any plans. So for my part, that was quite useful because it became my plant playground. It meant that working within the remit of a grade 2 listed garden and a grade 1 listed house, we used to refer to the house as the sphere of influence because it's where the family lived and they spent a lot of time working there as well. And so from every, the house dominated the garden from every direction, didn't it really?
It did. But, you know, you're saying you love Gogglebox. It was like that. That was no show. That was every day with Dom and Steph.
They were wonderful to work for, but also if you wanted a sensible conversation with them, that there was a limited period when that would happen before they head to the pub at lunchtime. You know? in fact, there were even a few occasions where on the walkie-talkie, Dom would radio me and tell me to come to the pub. And I say, but Dom, I'm busy. There's a lot going on. I'm paying your wages. I want come to the pub now or you're fired. I did learn a good balance between the pleasure of working for a family and the pleasure of working in a garden. And so we felt like we were having a lot of fun. There wasn't pressure there, you know, to perform. And so I think that brought out a lot of creativity. It meant we did a lot of fun things. And we weren't afraid to make mistakes and do things differently.
But that was also because they weren't trying to force things upon us. It was, you know, come to me with the ideas and I'll say yes or I'll say no, but I'm not telling you what I think you should be doing.
Yeah, they very much left me to it. They said, it's your garden. You've done the research in the background. You're the professional. If we don't like something, we'll tell you. Otherwise, over to you. Which is slightly daunting and incredibly brave. I mean, how many people would happily, you know, hand over quite a large amount of money, both in physical money that we had to spend to restore the garden, which took about 5 years because the garden hadn't been touched. 4 acres, all walled in, had virtually not 30 years.
Wow, yeah.
So there was not really a garden to speak of. I mean, even the hedges, you can see from this picture, we're looking from the poplar walk where we had a winter walk under the poplars, through the meadow and up at the southwest facade, and the yew hedge, which circles the bowling green, was right up to that first floor set of windows. It was a real challenge. And the holm oaks, which are clipped into columns, looking a little shaggy there, but we used to take great pride in keeping them all the same shape and size each year, getting that sharpened shape for the winter. They were 50-foot trees again because they hadn't been clipped properly. So it was a mammoth undertaking. And of course, things got a lot worse when you're restoring something. Things look a lot worse to begin with. And people of Sandwich were, at the beginning, were quite upset with me because they thought I was tearing this lovely old garden apart. But things have to get worse before they get better.
Yeah, so often the case. Yeah. We had a question actually. What year did you start at the Salutation?
2005.
2005. Okay. Yeah.
So I spent about 10 years out in industry, in the wilderness, if you like, before I became a head gardener.
Yeah.
And it was my first head gardener post as well. So the opportunity to restore a Lutchen's garden. I mean, I have to say, I think that's partly naivety from Dom and Steph that they didn't pick somebody with more credentials than I had. And years later, when I asked Steph why she gave me the job, she said that it was because she liked me. And
good start.
Yeah, I think when you're working closely with somebody in their family, they need to trust you. They need to like you. I mean, that it's not essential, but it really does help if you're going to be seeing them every day. So for me, that was a you know, you realize how important people are, and as time went on, as you know, and not just at Salutation, but and now beyond that, I of course realized that people are everything.
Yeah.
Plants come and go, gardens come and go. Everything is people. So I always look for qualities, not necessarily just qualifications when I'm looking for people to work with. You don't have to be qualified to be talented. It does help. Some skills.
Yeah.
And actually, so this next picture, I just thought I'd include a few pictures of salutation. This was the Holmwood walk. So it was a real mix, formal and informal. Relaxed and rebellious in some places, and very formal in others. And so we tried to do the garden justice in places where you could see it was clear that Lutchins had intended this kind of very sharp avenue of holm oaks that had been clipped. And there's this lovely oak door down at the end that I was kind of hoping revealed another walled garden beyond, but actually, when you go through that door at the end of the holm oak walk, was just the Sandown Road leading out to the golf course. but a nice visual, because it gives you something to aim at. And the rose Comte de Chambord is a Portland rose. The scent from it, wonderful. It should be repeat flowering, but in East Kent we've got the North Downs at Canterbury stop there, and then you get a real rain shadow down into this very far East Kent corner. So we have some of the highest sunshine hours and some of the lowest rainfall anywhere in the country. It's something. It feels very different to even anywhere else in Kent. So it was quite an experimental space, simply because it was a 4-acre walled garden that was so sheltered. We could get away with all kinds of things. So we, of course, made great use of that. But the contour, although it's meant to repeat all the time, often by the time we got into July and August, it was just too hot and they got very shy about flowering. And then they suddenly flashed up again as down a little bit in September. The lovely bronze and the osteospermums, they just kept flowering and flowering, so they held that together well. But the scent carried you down that pathway. It was wonderful. And then in the winter, the lovely holm oaks were just really strong evergreen presence in a garden that didn't have an awful lot of that sort of thing. But we created a few meadow areas, and we also had a few big long borders. And one particular long border here, we lavished a huge amount of attention on as a garden team, and it was probably the border we walked past most regularly, and because of the light, you can see that lovely soft golden light. We decided not to really, there was a lot of golds and yellows and oranges and flame colors, hot colors, and of course lots of Mediterranean planting, because we've got holm oaks to the back, and you can see they've been pruned quite hard here, but that often they had quite a large canopy, and in the wintertime they acted like a huge umbrella, a frost umbrella, which meant that we could get away with planting huge echiums under them, and they would flower 15, 18 feet tall, and it was wonderful. Wow. Great fun. All the kind of things, things that people would say, oh no, there's not a sniff of hardiness of it, but it would survive here on this long border. And so lots of hot colors, because that lovely evening glow, that light that came in was so soft. And actually, I always sort of felt sorry for lots of garden visitors. We were open 7 days a week from 2007 until 2019. And of course, they would be there in the harshest of light, because we'd open at 11 and close at 4, sometimes 5. But actually, it was the early evening. I mean, I think there's probably only a handful of times when I thought, God, where's 20,000 people right now? It's perfect. And it was always around 7 o'clock in the evening, in a summer's evening. It was wonderful, wasn't it, at times? Always see things to do, of course. But the long border was about 200 feet long, and it was about 18 feet deep. So it was a good sized, deep border. And you can see right here in the on the right hand side, Plectranthus and Argentatus. That's a plant that would become a national collection for me, for us. So Salutation was my plant playground, and certainly where I gained a reputation, I think, as a plantsman. In fact, Jimmy Blake, that's where we first met, was because he didn't realize how far away East Kent was from where he was. And I was just closing the gates to the garden when there was a bang, 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 bang. Please, Steve, let me in. I'm so sorry. It's Jimmy. I'm really late. And I was thinking, I'm going to get in so much trouble, but you better come in. And because I knew it would be hours. And we spent hours in the garden, but not quite as bad as when I was with Tom Hart-Dyke, who had come down to see me. And we were looking at plants by torchlight at around 11 o'clock in the evening.
Yes,
So, such is the way when you're with passionate plants people.
yeah.
Wanted to show him special things. Anything you want to add about Salutation in your time there? Obviously, for me, it's a real garden of love. Obviously,
Yes, I'm sure. Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I guess you've got slides for gold medals.
Oh, well, no, yes, I have. Yeah, we can mention that. Yeah, here we go. It's one of you and me, my darling.
So yeah, 2019 was the last year at Salutation when everything happened, but we also won a gold medal at Chelsea as a garden team for a display of, well, as somebody referred to it, dead plants. It was a seeded display. We wanted to do something different, so we decided a border in the middle of winter was the way to go. So everything was kind of
Very brave. That was really brave. Yeah, I've never seen anything like that at Chelsea. Interesting. Yeah.
No, I think somebody said it was at Chelsea first.
Yeah. This was entered as what?
A floral exhibit.
A floor. Okay, right. Yeah. Right.
In the pavilion.
Yes.
And also we created we wanted a triangle, and nobody else had it. I know it's funny, but shapes make a big difference to build a display, particularly when you're working with something as tricky as seed heads.
Yeah. Everything was kind of placed as it would be growing in the border if all the foliage had just been stripped and it had been left. So it all made sense as a. Yeah,
we didn't want it to look
like a flower arrangement.
So we tried even to make sure that our plant, that the stem density right for the certain perennial types, so they look quite natural.
Yeah.
Even things like the veronicastrum we needed to make sure we dried a stem that had fasciation on it, because it was such a common occurrence in that plant.
Yes.
And so we had again, as a garden team, we were asked to help promote the garden and the hotel, as it became, instead of becoming a family home, for a few years it became a hotel. And how could we do that on a shoestring as well? So often when you don't have much, it breeds real innovation. So for every thrifty gardener out there, we pulled off a gold medal at Chelsea for 157 quid. Much it cost us to put it together, and that's including the diesel for the van to get us there.
Right. Yeah.
So
the hardest thing, I think, was the picking and storing and stopping the mice eating everything over the winter.
Yeah. Yes.
Finding the right moments. We'd spent years actually creating seed head arrangements for the house, because we've got this lovely old Lutchins house. But lots of very dark corners. The houseplants we'd have houseplants furnishing the house all over the place, and they go in for a few months and then come out to be resuscitated back to life. And actually, we sort of got a bit fed up with that and thought, how else can we do this? And so the seed head thing, we thought, okay, let's do some arrangements with seed heads, and then they can be a bit more static for a longer period. And then as soon as they've got too dusty, we'll take them away, or when they get fed up with them, perhaps. But also it changed the way we gardened fundamentally, because we started to leave more and more seed head groups alone in the borders. Traditionally years ago, it was always, you put the garden to bed in the autumn. In fact, you still hear it a lot now, and it almost makes me heave a bit when I hear that now. I just think surely we've moved past that a bit. but clearly we haven't with a lot of gardeners. And so we started to leave more and more seed heads behind. We do a bit of a tidy up, but we'd not be too tidy. We'd allow it to be rebellious, the garden. And also because the garden was so heavily herbaceous at Salutation, it meant that there was interest when frost arrived. Lots of wildlife turned up into the garden, stealing seed from the seed heads, collecting nesting material, overwintering insects. And so we started to leave more and more and more, and develop different processes as gardeners around that. Even down to, you didn't realize how many insects were living in hollow stems of the seed heads. And so there was a day when we were sort of shredding. We were just cutting the dead stems. It was late February, really late in the season, really, and for a lot of, we're shredding them straight away, and realized that, of course, by shredding them straight away, we were probably murdering thousands of insects.
Yes.
Sort of defeating the object. And so we realized that bundling the seed heads in big groups, leaving them at the back of the border on the pathways, was, and for a few weeks to let insects crawl out and hide somewhere else. So it changed everything about how we gardened.
Yes,
and the seed head display at Chelsea was, it was just something to help promote the garden initially, but also to start a wider conversation with gardeners. Just about how wonderful seed heads are. And they shouldn't, because I also hear this word de-browning. I hear this
browning, even on me.
De-browning. So it's kind of like it's trying to keep a border looking fresh late in the season. And I don't mind that a garden surrenders, ungraciously, if you like, into autumn and starts to look brown, and you get the russety tones. But some people want to cling on as long as possible to that freshness. I don't, and it doesn't worry me that things, I mean, actually in East Kent, where it gets so hot and dry, sometimes even in the middle of the summer, we have plants that look frazzled and brown, whether we want to or not. So that doesn't worry me. And I thought it'd be a nice chance to start a conversation with gardeners about maybe selecting interesting seed heads to leave behind, or thinking about plants beyond flower.
Yeah, no, it's hugely hugely important, I think, and I'm glad to see how much this has become accepted. It's one of those things that, I know you say there's still people who kind of determinedly tidy up the garden in the autumn, but since really, I suppose, since the mid-90s, it has become so much more the thing, and we're all so much better for it. But just that low winter sunlight at the latitude of the British Isles onto seed heads and grasses in early winter, I just think is magic.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It's a special time of year. In fact, autumn is my favorite time of year. Whereas for Lou, it's the spring.
Yeah, but I mean, the seed head thing is so important, isn't it? Because that was the whole border creation at the land. After we'd experimented with it at Salutation, now at the nursery, our long border, that was kind of primarily planted with seed heads in mind, and we really don't clear that until the spring.
We've got slides.
You've got slides of it.
I've got a short video actually of the seed head display for you, so you can see. Interestingly, where we dried a lot of the seed heads, there were things like the Lapillus niger that had kind of, the seed capsules are kind of in two halves. And the way they eject the seed is by kind of corkscrewing and throwing the seed out left and right. And so we thought this lovely corkscrew black and silver effect from the inside of the seed pod to the outside looked lovely. Got it to Chelsea, and because it was so humid in the floral marquee, they straightened out. The pods just straightened out. And there were some interesting things like the cardoon. We had the cardoon heads tightly bound with string right up until press day morning. And so where you can see, this is taken on press day, the cardoon head is fully open. And by the end of the second day, after judging on the RHS members day on the Tuesday, some of the seed were already tumbling out and were sitting on the floor. And so it just goes to show the humidity was one of the things we weren't expecting. although what I did do, because we'd been experimenting with transporting seed heads, because they get shaken to bits trying to transport them, is I sent off one of my young gardeners. I said, go to Pound World or Poundland or one of these cheap shops. I said, and look for a young lady. I said, hang around the kind of feminine product aisle. Look for a young lady who's got gravity-defying hair, and whatever hairspray she picks up, you bring that hairspray back to me. Don't get arrested. Don't do anything a bit silly. Following women around stores gets you in trouble. But the hairspray, I wanted a real lacquer, something that would help hold some of those seed heads together in transport. Yeah, just to stop them falling to bits. We did have a little bit of trouble with the sorghum. So we've been growing sorghum nigrum. It's just on the far right of the picture, and it was the quite weak unions on the nodes. And so as the moisture built up, it would just suddenly, a whole stem would just lean out of the border, and Lou would have to very creatively kind of try and wire it so that you couldn't see it.
How funny, gosh.
Some seed heads, like the cranberry maritima, we actually hung it in a glass house to really bleach it white, so that it would look exactly as you would expect to see it when you come across it on a shingle beach at Dungeness or Sandwich Bay, if you're us, because at Sandwich Bay there's lots of these. It's a lovely ecology down there, very special.
Yes.
Biggest colony of lizard orchids anywhere in the UK. It's quite.
Oh, really? Gosh.
Yes, an amazing place, quite bleak, smaller than Dungeness, of course, but still a similar feel. And a couple of golf courses out there, so you do have to kind of dodge the golfers a little bit. They wonder what you're up to. But a real moment for me while we were putting this display together was the Allium Schubertii. And so having a triangular shape allowed us to kind of build quite interesting architectural seed heads off the corners. And while we were kind of placing, Jacques Armand's nursery came in, and they were dead opposite us, and they had them in flower opposite us.
That's neat.
There was a moment where I had a bit of a wobble, where I thought, God, is it a good idea? The judge is going to get this, I guess I did say to the guys, it didn't matter, but deep down, of course, it does. It always matters. But the most important thing was to satisfy ourselves.
Yes.
That was the ultimate goal.
Yes.
Anything else on the seed heads?
Don't think so.
No, yeah, good. Oh, and the lovely little slate labels. That was a real nice touch.
Oh, yeah, very nice. Yeah.
Really did like those. And we made sure that we put if they had a country of origin or place of origin, or maybe garden origin, we placed that on it and what family the plants were in, so that we tried to give as much information. And at the side, on a little table for the seed heads, we actually had perspex cubes with all of the seed in them from every plant, so that people could actually pick them up and look closely at what the seed was, what it looked like. So I'll let you.
And this was 2019 again, just weeks later at Hampton Court, was an exotic display. So this was a plant hunters jungle camp, and this was another gold medal and best in show.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, it wasn't something we, as a garden team, we'd been off around the marquee looking at everyone else's wonderful displays, and we'd kind of all given our input on what we thought would be the best in show, and it certainly wasn't ours in our mind.
No, we're giving it about a silver
gilt. we think we'd be happy with a silver gilt, but we'd had a lot of fun building this.
Yeah, and it was a huge display.
Yeah. Now we time's getting on. I think a lot of us are waiting to hear more about the nursery.
Oh yeah, well, we'll move on from that then, and I'll just show you. That's the image of the plant hunter camp in the middle of that.
Oh, great! Yeah,
and a little bit. So I'll move past. Well, this is actually something, because the nursery feeds into a lot of our projects.
Yes.
So part of the reason for creating the nursery is for us. is because we couldn't find plants that we wanted to have in our borders. So years ago, we sort of started growing plants at Salutation to feed the garden, and now we sell plants to the public at plant fairs, part of the Plant Fairs Roadshow, and also independent plant fairs. We don't do mail order at the moment, but that, you know, we're building it slowly. Something for us about the nursery that was really important was we didn't want a big debt burden. We bought land for our nursery, our 3 acres. We bought it outright. It's ours, so nobody can take it off us unless we do something really crazy. And so for us, it was really important to build the business gently at a good pace, so that we didn't make decisions based around money, but made decisions that were good decisions.
Yeah.
Around being gardeners, because we are gardeners first and growers second. That's a really important point for us. So this is actually a border that we planted mostly with plants that we'd grown at one of our projects. So alongside the nursery, we manage a few gardens, and one isn't.
Yeah, this is the old rectory that I look after. So we do all the design and planting there as well. I work there regularly, as well as the nursery.
Yeah, so that's a lovely big border that we created.
And meadows that we're creating as well.
And there's about we think there's about 16 acres there. And so we've done a lot of tree planting and planted an orchard, lots of meadow work, lots of fun. And again at Canterbury Cathedral, that's another project, a big project we did year before last, opening the nursery, and we supplied a big chunk of the plants. Not all of us. We do look for special things that other people grow. You know, we have the things that work for us, and you can't grow everything. So, you know, the most important thing is to know what you grow and grow it well, and know what conditions it likes and how it likes to grow. So we look for plants from other special nurseries, but this is quite a harsh environment on the main precinct here. And they get 1 million, or maybe it's 2 million visitors a year at Canterbury Cathedral. It's quite something. And so all the planting has been very robust and very drought tolerant, which of course suited us. That's
our growing conditions.
Our growing conditions. Yes. And so that was worked perfectly. And so we designed this, also a dedicated dry garden within a courtyard area that is actually the hotel for the cathedral, but you can access it off the main precincts, and that's that's a great space. And it's coming on well. Only 18 months in of growing, and we're getting so much great feedback. I mean, this was a space that was a real thoroughfare, but now people linger and they sit there. They've had to put benches there so that people can enjoy it. And all of the bedrooms of the hotel look in on this garden from all around.
Great.
This year we took the nursery as part of the Plant Fairs Roadshow, a little collaboration between 7 of us nurseries, including Derry Watkins from Special Plants.
Oh, yes.
So it's great fun to have Derry with us, and Paul from Pelham Plants, and Miles Japanese Maples, and Rachel from Swallowfields, a nice little Annie at Daisy Roots, nice little cohort of nurseries, and got our first gold medal for an exotic display, all grown by us, of course. And for me, one of the special plants in there from our nursery was Aesculus wangii. So it's a horse chestnut from Vietnam.
Wow.
We got given 3 plants when we were in Ireland from Adam, the head gardener at Blarney Castle, who had collected them in Vietnam, and we've been growing them ever since, with the hope that we could, show them off at some point. At one point, when they're big enough, we'll probably plant one outside into our jungle garden at the land. But trying to put together exotics and get some of them flowering in the springtime, particularly this, was a bit of a challenge.
So I mean that kind of those two projects, the project at the cathedral and this, they really reflect, and well, mine as well, really reflect our eclectic mix of planting. We love exotics. We've got a jungle garden at home. I'm on the RHS tender plant committee.
Oh, right.
As well as loving all the drought tolerant perennials.
And
We use
I'm
those
on
in the planted and the nursery site, and Steve's on the RHS herbaceous plant committee.
Right.
So that they all kind of blend together in a strange way.
Yeah. So because they sort of satisfy all the needs in us as gardeners.
Yes.
Because often you can't separate the two. But we've collected, because we're sort of plant collectors a bit as well, and plant breeders. So we have 4 national collections, 2 are Louise's, specifically 2 are mine. Plectranthus, which is mine, but Louise actually spends a lot of time looking after it because she's very good. She's very good like that with all these plants. And so closely allied to salvias. And I just think they're a gardener's dream.
They're an interesting group, aren't they? I mean, they're probably most of them a bit on the tender side, but an incredible range of different aromas and very different foliage. No, they're a really exciting group. And
yeah, I love them, and I don't understand why people don't grow them more.
I mean, yeah, they are tender, and that's what people don't like about them. But for summer container effect, they're amazing. They're fast growing and they root in water. So, they're as good as using any pelargonium in a pot display.
Yes.
And dark-leaf dahlias is another one of my collections, and we breed with that as well. So we're always looking to create within the Plectranthus, and the dahlia there is one that I launched at Hampton Court in 2018 called Lovely Eyes Lulu, which is actually named after daughter Louise, not partner Louise.
Right.
But for me, it was about finding a plant that was sturdy, about 1 meter tall, no need for any staking, single or semi-double, attractive foliage. I wanted a flower that looks at you most of the time, no nodding, and darker eye if possible, and attractive to bees. So I had the kind of criteria I was looking at, and out of about 1,500 seedlings, there was only a handful we bothered keeping, and this was one of them. And there's a couple of other, a picture of on the left of a dahlia and Plectranthus together. Now, Lou's national collections, do you want to speak about those?
Yeah, they both actually exist at home at the moment rather than at the nursery, because the jungle garden here has been established for
a decade.
A decade. So all the pseudopanax live outside permanently, and they're all perfectly hardy here for us. The worst we've had is a tiny bit of damage on one of the variegated forms in a really bad spell. And all of the Persicaria virginiana types actually preferred the shade, so they work really well in an underplanting in the jungle.
Yeah, we're slowly creeping in representatives of them all at the land as the space develops. And so we'll move into that a bit then. So I know, like you say, time was creeping on. But we're always experimenting. So we were lucky enough to buy 3 acres of land at the edge of Sandwich that was just a field, and it hadn't been really gardened at all for quite a long time. Had been a bit of a market garden ad hoc. So we did inherit a borehole, but we're completely off grid. So no mains power, no mains water, which actually we love. And in time, we will get a solar system for the borehole up and running and for our power needs. But in the meantime, we've got a very efficient Hyundai generator, and we created a very pretty little pump house to house things. But one of the things we really agonized over with the nursery for me was compost, and the move away from peat and how to grow plants. And so looking backwards at how things used to be done, and field growing perennials seem to be part of the solution. Not all of it, because not all plants are suitable for bare root production, but it was part of the solution. We thought if we can produce 1/3 of the plants that we grow as bare root plants to sell during the autumn, winter and spring, then that's 1/3 less plastic use, that's 1/3 less raw material compost use. And if a lot of other nurseries did that, that would be a huge saving.
Yes, and also I think probably you get better plants. I mean, certainly with herbaceous material. I mean, when Howard used to do a lot of bare root plants, you know, you'd get these really, really big divisions, man, much better than you would out of a container. So yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely better value. We do, yeah.
Better value, bigger plants. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a seasonal timing element for it, but and we look dahlias, lots of tender plants and exotics, but lots of field grown plants, and you can see in the top left corner. I have to say I'm not really into the whole, you know, throwing 60 tons of crushed concrete everywhere over perfectly good topsoil to plant into. But
I know, yes.
It's not. It feels like a bit of a fad to me, if I'm honest. It's not.
Yes.
But this is our car park, and so we like to use recycled materials, upcycling, repurposing.
Our soil's dry enough. We don't need to be making it any drier.
Right, yeah.
But so we thought we'd take it as an opportunity, you know, because you're never going to really park into the corners, or very rarely. So we thought, well, we'll all of the sweeps and curves and a spine through the middle of our car park, we'd plant and we plant into it and just experiment. And nothing's ever watered there, so it's all plant material, potentially for the nursery seed or divisions. But we never water, even at the time of plant. So for us, for landscape architects or designers that know that their plants are going to go into really harsh environments, you know, we're sort of developing a list of plants you can literally plant and never ever do anything to them, and they should thrive. And I know lots of people have probably got bits of those lists, but certainly for our area here in Kent and East Kent regions, we're developing quite a nice plant list and palette of those sorts of plants that could do quite well. But in the same breath, our site is quite is quite wet in the winter, so it's a silty loam, and it sits quite low to the water table. So I mean, the water table is 10 meters down, but in the winter, because we have the marshes around us, because we're so far away from the sea, in the winter it's so wet you can barely walk on the ground at times. Yet in the summer it is like dust. So finding plants that can cope with the great British winter and also these periods of the hot, long, dry summer that we're now getting, the summer dry garden, and then the winter wet is the challenge. One of our tunnels is actually planted. It's planted, the front 40 foot is planted as a desert, the back 40 foot planted as an exotic planting.
This is kind of an experiment, really. I mean, some things in here probably shouldn't survive the winter. We don't heat these tunnels. We just fleece what's in there. So there was lots of things that went in that we thought, well, it might make it, it might not. And actually it was a surprise as to what does. So along with all the cacti and agaves, most of which have been given us to us over the years.
We find them more oddities and unusual rather than, and fascinating rather than beautiful, but it is kind of, there is a beauty there.
Mixed into those is various succulents and species pelargoniums. And so it's a lovely place to sit and have lunch in the winter.
Yeah, we wanted the land and the nursery to be beautiful, but to feed our soul. You know,
yes, great.
The more time we spend there, the more we want to be there, the more complicated the garden spaces become. So you can have all of those things. You know, because we're gardeners, we want to be gardening it, and we want to be experimenting. And I used to joke with Lou that when you're experimenting as a gardener, when you're trying things out, when you're being brave with a plant that you're perhaps not sure about, yes, there's a financial cost to it, but you know, often gardeners, we don't care so much about that. But I did used to joke that we had the most expensive compost heap in Kent of all the things that we just kept killing. But we did learn quite a bit from it.
Yeah.
And so we've got the very center of the garden is where all the bare root production goes on, and our stock beds are.
Yeah, I mean, the garden evolved. I mean, we drew it to size on a piece of paper with a list of all the things that we wanted from the space before we started anything.
Yeah, we designed all of the pathways, all the beds, all of the areas. We designed them all to scale on paper before we had even finished signing the paperwork for the actual purchase of the land. So we sort of had to do going through. and started planning. In fact, we ordered 2,500 beech hedging to turn up the week after the dotted line had signed, and just prayed that nothing went wrong.
Oh, gosh, yes, yes.
Because we were pushed a bit. But
Yeah.
this is Baptisia, and I'm chairing the Baptisia trial for the RHS. So it's been planted at Wisley. Yeah, so it's been planted at Wisley, and we've got about 45 different species and cultivars at the No-Name Nursery.
Right. Interesting. So you've got some of old chappie from Wild Man from North Carolina. What's his name? He's been
Tony Ave.
Yeah. Got some
Delight.
Yes. Yeah.
And some from Kuhn Janssen and Hans Kramer. We've got a whole host of different Baptisias, and now we've got thousands of seedlings growing on with so many different cultivars. We thought we'd seed and see what we get from it.
Yes.
Might end up with some special plants, but this is, does everything a lupin, that you hoped a lupin would do, but will survive the long dry periods in the summers of East Kent and coastal summers. So if it's a harsh environment and lupins won't survive, then, and of course most people don't realize lupins prefer a slightly acidic soil. So anywhere neutral alkaline, they're almost hopeless.
Yes.
So we have 14 stock beds that are 2 meters wide and 23 meters long. And the reason we're going with a 2 meter bed and then a 2 meter path is so that we can intermittently rest the ground, so we can swap the path of the beds. Because the soil is our greatest asset. Lots of mulching, lots of manuring, lots of, we use everything really. We tried all sorts. The only thing we don't use is spent mushroom compost, because there's too much alkalinity in it and we're too close neutral already. So this is I guess this is where we lavish a lot of attention. And actually the way we designed the site, I'll mention that in a minute because we've got the overview. But this is our long border. We called it the lockdown long border that we planted in 2020 during the lockdown. We kind of hid and went feral for a while. So it's a short video, and it's 100 meters long and it's 6 meters deep. We planted a dark purple beech hedge to its back under the alders and poplars, and we put a 1 meter wide path at the back of the border. That was a mistake I made at Salutation, not putting in an access path at the back.
Sensible. Yes.
Yeah, well, there's always going to be that one weed that you see poking up, and it's 5 meters into the border.
And so this, as well as being a long border we enjoy and have fun with, it's another part of stock bed for the garden as well, for the nursery. So everything gets lifted, divided,
cuttings, seed collected. We have, and we take a lot of pleasure in this space.
Yes.
And also as gardeners, it then feeds our ambitions to make good plant associations that we can that we can sort of share with people, that we think this works really well with that, and that follows on from that, or because lots of plants have ambitions to kill their neighbors because they want to take over, and finding plants that will coexist in a community it is a lot of fun to do, but also hard at times.
Yes.
I mean, previously with the long border at Salutation was a real mixed colour border, so we really wanted to experiment with a colour limited border. So this is all purples, pinks, mauves, blues. There's no red, no bright reds or yellows or oranges in there. Very fine bit of white, but not a lot, nothing blobby.
And a good ratio of grasses in there as well.
And so the winter picture of it was as important.
Yeah, because we designed it for high summer and late summer interest, and then the winter seed heads. And even so, where we have things like gateways, and you can see there in the picture the Daphne Ballure in a border, but in the summertime just disappears to the background. You don't even notice it. But near entrances and exits and pathways and gateways, we like to plant scented plants, because of course that's when you slow down to go through gates or turn a corner.
Yes,
and that's when you capture the scent. And
this this is the main route to the nursery, so we will have to walk this route every time we go to the nursery. So it was really important that it wasn't barren for that large portion of the winter.
Yeah, so we don't cut it down until the end of February, and so I think and we could have made our lives so much easier, but we placed the car park at one end of the long border and the actual polytunnels and hard standing for the nursery right at the other end, just off of its sight line, so you don't look at it at the other end of the long border. But that way we walk the long border every day, and that's really important. So you can see from above here, you can see the car park at the top left and the long border all the way along the boundary to the tunnels. So it's magic to be able to walk the land regularly and connect with it.
Yes, yes, it's nice to get that full view. Right. Yeah, no, looks so you got 3 acres there altogether.
Yeah.
No, looks really interesting, really impressive. We got a couple of questions. One is actually about the salutation. Is there actually documentation that Lutyens dictated the layout of the hard landscaping at least?
Yeah, so we were really lucky that as an architect, everything's really well architectural monographs, Lutyens' work, very well documented, even all of the tree placement.
Yeah. And is the salutation open now to the public, still open as a garden?
Sadly not. I mean, in 17 years, I never spent longer than 10 days away from the garden. Really? A head gardener should be in love with his garden, and I was.
Yes.
But when it was sold, and it was a private family that bought it, and that's absolutely fine. It was my time to bow out.
To bow out. Yeah. Where is the old rectory?
Oh, it's a village, a nearby village, but that is a private family. It's
all right.
Well,
yes.
But that.
Great. Well, that was fascinating. Really interesting. A little sort of corner of England with this obviously very special climate and an amazing range of plants. And I mean, it'd be great to do a webinar with you at some point in the future, because you've obviously both of you got so much knowledge. It'd be really great to pass that on. So, thank you so much.
Overview for this evening, Noel. Sorry to.
We'll look for. I'll really look forward to meeting up with you at some point. Yes.
Yeah, that would be magic. If you wouldn't mind me just saying that this weekend, if anybody happens to be south-based, we are actually open for the National Garden Scheme this Sunday.
Oh, right. Yeah.
At home.
And I'll you can just see in this image, this is our jungle garden. You can see the greenhouse in the middle from above. This is the rising sun while I'm brushing my teeth in the morning.
Wow, it looks amazing.
And then And when you're inside it, it's equally as exotic. But I think that's one of my favorite images of the garden.
Yeah, brilliant.
You can't see where the garden finishes and begins.
No. Amazing. Great. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. All the best.
Thank you so much, Noel.
All the best. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.